Welcome back, baseball fans. 1971-74 carryover league. This is a first half wrap up at the All-Star break. We're going to go look at the structure of the season, scheduling, standings, how the next part of the season goes, stats, leaders, so forth, so on. I'll wrap up just about everything here. I want to begin, however, with a look at the structure of this league that we do every year. From March, it's a 3-part process. It's a regular season schedule through the All-Star break, then we have a postseason tournament, and then we have the playoffs. So it's 3 stages that wraps up around Labor Day weekend. We start around St. Patrick's Day, finish up at Labor Day. If you're wondering why we cut it loose that early, it's because football season starts shortly thereafter, and it's a little bit too much activity to cover all of this, so I like to get my baseball season done before football season starts. So I'm just going to show you the structure of what the first half of the season looks like. We have 32 teams, of course. We have 6 series played by all teams. You play in your division, your 3 rivals, a best of 7. You play 2 other teams in your league, a best of 5. And you play 1 interleague series of best of 3. Here is the math of number of games you need to win with a min and max here. The minimum number is 12, meaning that in 3 best of 7s you either swept or got swept. So you're going to play between 12 and 21 games. You're going to play between 6 and 10 league games and 2 or 3 interleague games. These are the average number of games you'll be playing. This is the key box right here. The minimum number and maximum number of games expected to play before the All-Star break. It's a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 34. There's some pretty interesting teams in here that are not necessarily near the average of 27. Also, with 32 teams, you have 16 times 27 is 432. 32 teams means 2 teams play, so it's 16 games. You expect, this is games expected. This is taking this number here between 20 and 34, 27. This is the number 432 that you expect to play by the All-Star break. And this is the year, and this is the number of games played at the All-Star break. It was 443, as you can see, 457, and last year 460, but this year it has tumbled back down to 439. So this has been an outlier year. When you see the number drop like that, it means that the series are running shorter. And when they're running shorter, it means that there may not be as much competition in the league for many different reasons. Could just be that there's a distortion of talent from the top teams to the bottom teams. I mean, it could be anything from in the previous years there were better cards, and so it made for more competition as we got better cards in the league. I will say that in this timeline now, 71 to 74, you know, I am finally using your original Strat-O-Matic card sets from 71, 2, 3, 4. The first year of Super Advanced is 71, 2, 3, 4. And previously we had the 69 and 70 reissues. And in the 69 and 70 reissue boxes, they gave you extra cards. So it could just be that the talent pool has shrunk a little bit, meaning that the rosters aren't particularly good, meaning that some of these teams aren't particularly good, and then therefore are losing more. And that would explain fewer games, less competition. That is a possibility. It's a trend to watch moving forward, because next year it'll be the same thing. 75, and then the year after that, 76. 77 is when Seattle and Toronto arrive, and things are going to change. So this will be a nice little 3-year trend here to watch. What happens next year and the year after that. And kind of interesting to do that. What happens when we add the 75 and 76 cards the next 2 years? Does it stay around here, or do we get back to here? Fun little process. So 439 games have been played. Let's go over to stats really quick. And if you look at the summation of the American League here, 225 and 210. The National League, 214 and 229. You add it up, it is 439, 439. Obviously, the leagues don't have to play the same number of games, though they do have to have the cross of it has to be the same. 15 over for the American League, 15 over for the National League. Right there, that explains a lot. The fact that the National League is so weak for some reason this year. I know why, though. I think I know why. It's 15 under 500, which means that they lost a lot of 2-0 head-to-heads in the interleague battles. 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 is very short, and they can't make up those games. I think it's because in the National League, you have these 4 expansion teams here, and the talent's gotten so diluted that these teams are, none of them are really that good. Portland's in first, 2 over 500. And the 5th expansion team is the Marlins right there, 9 and 16. And you also don't have a 12-12 split of traditional MLB teams because of these guys. The Expos. We moved them across the Canadian border to Burlington, Vermont by Lake Champlain, put them in the American League North, and they've been tearing up the American League to a tune of 18 and 7. That's almost your gap in interleague play right there. Moving a National League team to the American League. Put the Expos in the National League and see what happens. Anyway, it's been a pretty interesting season compared to previous ones. Which brings us to the next part of the season. We have an All-Star break. Well, in our All-Star game, that'll be a separate video, All-Star selection show. But we start a postseason tournament. Postseason tournament runs after the All-Star break and wraps up near the end of August, around August 15th-ish. It's probably later than that, but I always say the middle of August is when it ends, so that I can still start the playoffs before Labor Day. And this is an interesting format that I've been tweaking over the years, and I really like it now. We think of the first round of this tournament here, this row here, I call it the last games. Imagine if you had all your teams playing 500 ball until the last games of the year. So what we have is, we have a U07, I call it. It's not a best of 7, it's up to 7. You play up to 7 games to make a distinction. Your second place teams play your first place teams, and your fourth place teams play your third place teams in your division. What you're trying to determine is who's in first and who's in fourth. Once we know who's in fourth, they become eliminated because there's no way to get a fourth place team into the playoffs in a 12-team playoff field. 4 division winners and 2 wild cards means that a fourth place team, no matter how good they are, can't make the playoffs. So once you eliminate these fourth place teams, you go from a 32-team league to a 24-team league with 8 gone. Then the tournament continues. The second round, we're now going to play in up to 5 more games. And I call a friendly between the ones. The ones going across a division they have not played in the regular season are playing basically just for seeding purpose. Nobody gets eliminated. These teams do not get eliminated in the tournament, whoever loses here. And we still aren't technically clinching divisions yet. We're just trying to distinguish first place and who's got a better record. We also have, in that same cross-division battle, the 3s are visiting the 2s. And so through this process, we're trying to distinguish the top seeds 1 through 4, and then we want to eliminate 4 teams. Most of the time, your third place teams won't be able to recover and be eliminated. Most of the time, not all the time. So we're going to eliminate 8 of the third place teams who started the round, and sometimes it's the second place teams who fell into third place. But we're going to eliminate 8 more, and now we got 16 teams left. So we only have 4 more teams in a traditional playoff field, which is the third round. The third and final round of this tournament, now we're playing up to 3. And so we have 1 to 8 and 1 to 8 in each league. So I'm going to have 8 play 5, 7 play 6, up to 3 games to distinguish eliminate 2 in each league, so we get down to 12. And when I say up to and all this, we're factoring in, add in record. Add in the record year to date, so that we can find out how much, what the calculation is, so that we get to, you can look at this tournament as a continuation of the baseball season, and it should get you to a number that adds up kind of nicely for all the teams. This little tournament's about 120 games. You played about 450 here, 120 here, and the playoffs are about another 120 or another 80. We expect to play about 660 games this year. That's usually what we get. But with this number being a little bit lower, it might be 640 games we play this year. Then the playoffs begin in the third and final part of this process, and it's traditional wild card, best of 5. Then we have divisional best of 7, but I use an NBA format of 2-2-1-1-1. This is to get the number 1 and 2 bye teams to get game 5 in their park, so to give them even more an advantage. I wanted to weight the bye teams to encourage bye teams to advance. Does it work? Not a lot, not all the time, but it's an attempt. Then traditional league championships are your standard 2-3-2, of course. 2-3-2 best of 7 for your league championship and World Series. And those, of course, the World Series wraps up for me around Labor Day. All these broadcasts will usually drag into the middle of September or so, because there's a lag between when I play these games, when I post them on YouTube. And then after a short little break, I kick off a fall league in October, which is just a much smaller scale league, a fun little league I like to do in the fall months while I'm watching football. And that's what the structure looks like of the league. So we're going to do 2 things here. We're going to look at the standings at the All-Star break in each league, and then we're going to look at the matchups for your tournament. American League East. Let's start with the first of all. Let's start with the seeds. So far, the Expos are sitting at number 1 in the American League, 11 over 500. Baltimore is 8 over 500 up here, and then you have the White Sox 5 over, and then the A's down here at 3 over. Are currently sitting the 4 teams positioned at the top of their divisions. Toronto having a nice year, +8, and the Tigers +5. This is one of those interesting teams I want to talk about here. By the way, the All-Star game is in Detroit. It's the 71 All-Star game in Detroit, and I'm going to have a little home run derby because it was such a tremendous roster of sluggers, and also, yeah, it'll be fun. But anyway, we're always looking for teams who are an outlier in games played, and here they are. It is the Tigers. 13-8, add that up, 21 games. 21 games for the Tigers. The minimum is 20. So the Tigers have only avoided being swept or sweeping their opponent by 1 more game. That is a staggeringly small number of games played in any season I've played. It's incredible, small number. So small, in fact, that the Indians are technically a half game ahead in the overall standings, but in the winning percentage, they are behind, and also head-to-head, the Tigers beat the Indians 4 games to 1. As a matter of fact, that was the only series that was not a sweep for the Tigers. Expos swept them. They swept Ohio players. And then they started 5-0 to the Tigers. So, interesting. Looking for a team that's played the maximum number of games. Yankees have played 31 of a possible 34. They've been in everything. And that might be the highest number here in the American League. National League, Dodgers have been another team that's been swept a lot. And they swept the Braves, the best team in the National League, 3 straight, but have been swept a couple times. 10 and 13. This is why this is again why the quantity of games played here is a little bit low. A lot of sweeps. Very, very unusual. Normally teams gut out a win or two, but we've seen a lot of teams giving up when they're down 0-3. The Las Vegas team won this division a year ago. They played 31 games. They've been fighting, but playing 12-19 there. That's pretty bad. And the Cardinals. So here you are. Here's probably your most interesting team. 32 games. 2 games less than the maximum number. And the funny part about the Cardinals is they beat the Reds in 4-3. They beat the Pirates 4-3, and they lost to the Cubs 4-3, which could be an interesting tiebreaker. All right. Now let's take a look at the Braves, #1 in the National League. Giant Astros at 593 ball, sitting at 2. Cardinals at 18-14-3. Portland just a couple games over at 4. And the insane wild card race to the National League, where if you're at 500, you got a shot. Giants are sitting there, Cubs are sitting there, but you get the Reds and the Pirates and the Phillies and the Mets. You know, even the Dodgers, they're all still available just because the interleague took it on the chin in interleague play. But it doesn't matter. If the entire league is all losing in interleague play, it means that against each other, they're still doing pretty well. So yeah, the American League is going to take a higher winning percentage, arguably, into the World Series, for what that's worth. I don't know. It's going to mean a lot by the time the 2 teams meet in the World Series. Let's look now at what has to happen in the first round of the postseason tournament. And this is going to be the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. Now, if you're wondering about home field, it's a flip of what the regular schedule was. So I'm going to take a quick peek here at just at one of these, Baltimore and Toronto. And we're going to take a look at, this is the actual schedule. Baltimore's schedule, this is who they played in the 6 rounds. And just before the All-Star break, Baltimore went at Toronto. So you see Baltimore at Toronto at the All-Star break. So now, in the postseason, it's flipped. This Toronto goes to Baltimore. You put in the what happened in that first series as a plus for whoever won that series. +3 here. Toronto beat Baltimore 4-1, so they had +3 as a head-to-head tiebreaker should it be needed. So this is this up to 7, because the Blue Jays are just a half game back, it turns into a best of 7. And the reason for that is that you only use the tiebreaker if it's tied or within a half a game. If Baltimore wins it 4-3, Toronto would still be +2, but they'd be a game and a half back, at which point you do not get a tiebreaker. You've got to be between a half game or tied. So fortunately for Baltimore, a simple best of 7 will distinguish these teams from first and second. Detroit finds themselves, unfortunately, 3 games behind the Expos, but winning 5 of 7 is not good enough. 5-2 leaves them tied, but the Expos would still have a +1 tiebreaker. So the Tigers need a 6-2. Okay, we're back. Where are we? So we had the Expos and Tigers. We explained that the Tigers, a 5-2 doesn't work because they don't have the rights to a tiebreaker. They need a 6-2. A 5-2, they'd be tied, but they wouldn't win overall head-to-head. Expos would still be +1, so they have to play a tie-breaking 8th game. So Detroit needs a 6-2. Brewers find themselves 2 games behind Milwaukee. Brewers find themselves 2 games behind the White Sox. White Sox are +2, however, so Milwaukee needs to go 5-2 in a best of 7. Oakland, California. California's 3.5 games back, 5-2. Does cut it to within a half a game. Does give them a tiebreaker, giving them a chance at winning it at 6-2. Atlanta and the Mets, 5.5 back. It's actually, it would need a 7-1 by technically. The Mets, if they win 6 out of 7, they'd be a half a game ahead with a tiebreaker, but you have to win by at least a game, so it would need a 7-1. The Cubs find themselves 2 games behind the Cardinals. The +1's not going to matter. If they go 5-2, they're still They go 4-3. They're still game back. They need a 5-2. Arizona, it works out mathematically right on target at 5-2 as they're trying to game back. And the Giants, 2.5 games back, they also need a 5-2. What usually happens in this round is that you don't get a lot of best of sevens. And we only had one because this race is close. It's a half game back. So this is just to distinguish first and second place in the first round of the tournament. But then you have the eliminations. These are thirds and fourths meeting. So Boston finds themselves 4 games behind the Yankees in the East. Unfortunately, 5-2 won't cut it. They need a 6-1, even with a meager +1 tiebreaker. Ohio finds themselves 7 entire games behind Cleveland. If they win all 7, I'll buy you a ice cream sundae. But Ohio needs to win all 7 games to knock the Indians out. Minnesota and Kansas City. Kansas City is a game and a half back. A 4-3 for Kansas City. You see here, a 4-3 gets them to within a half of a game. So then you would get a tiebreaker, 5-3. I wouldn't win it, of course. They're still behind. But they go 5-3, and that would cover Minnesota's +2. So they would be tied, but they'd then be a game ahead. Texas-Seattle, 0. It's a best of 7 because they're tied. +4 tiebreaker is not going to help because it's exactly 0. Florida is 3 games back. Unfortunately, a 5-2 just leaves them tied with the Phillies. They need a 6-2. This is one of the most important series of them all. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Reds are half game back, but they have a tiebreaker, so it's a simple best of 7. They're either going to finish a half game. If they win it 4-3, they would be a half game ahead, but they'd also be +4 overall. And if the Pirates win 4-3, they'd be a game and a half ahead. Cincinnati wouldn't get a right to a tiebreaker, so it's best of 7. Vegas is a game back. Colorado is a +2 tiebreaker, so Vegas needs to win a 5-3. And interesting again, the Padres swept the Dodgers earlier, +4, but the Padres find themselves a game behind. So it becomes a simple best of 7 because if the Padres win at 4-3, they'd be tied, but they would still have a +5 in the tiebreaker at that point. So, and these will all be reviewed before each of the series begin. So this is the first round of the postseason tournament, and then this is all the results of a year ago, and this is how we go through each of the rounds. The 7 games, and then the second round of the 5 games, and the third round, and then the playoffs begin. So it's a nice long tournament, and those are the matchups. So we've looked at the overall standings. We've looked at the we haven't looked at the stats yet, so let's take a look at that now. Let's start with the team stats. We're going to start with batting average, and this is both leagues combined into one. And I like the consistency. Normally there's an outlier team that hits close to 300. But as I said before, the number of cards used is smaller because we're only got the 71 to 74 original Strat-O-Matic cards, their first editions, and you only got about 576, maybe. It's 20 per team, plus 4 extra players per team. So you didn't have a lot of extra cards to pull from, but look at the consistency of the 280s and 279 teams. Dodgers playing under 500 ball, Cubs at 500, A's are above. Royals having a bad year, but hitting with a good batting average. This is sorted by batting average. Pirates, Cardinals, White Sox. In the power category, normally there's a team who hits like 50 homers. I'm not seeing it. The Rangers 36, Twins 43 for the Braves. So there they are, but they're hitting 251. Their last series before the ALLSTAR break, they play the Marlins. and were terrible, but they won it anyway. Braves are sitting at 43 home runs, and as we go to the bottom, the Red Sox, how does this even happen? The Red Sox hit 225, 11 points out of 31st place. That's staggering. That is incredibly bad luck. The Red Sox aren't that bad a hitting team, but it ruined their season. Mets season has fallen on hard times, 236. The Rockies didn't have a chance, nor did the Padres. The Giants are in the playoff hunt because of their pitching staff. The lowly Mariners hit a grand total of 12 home runs. That's not very good. And then stolen bases, the Twins have 26. That's nice. 21 for the A's. Now let's look at, this is pitching. Sorted by ERA, and there's Baltimore. 2.22 ERA for the Orioles. Even though they're hitting just 2.58. Look at these teams. Some teams decide to do it with pitching, and nobody's hitting 2.70. And then some teams decide to do it with batting average with higher ERAs. One team that's crossed over are these guys, the Dodgers. 6th in pitching and 1st in hitting. That'll get you 3 games under 500. That's the type of season the Dodgers had. Something to watch because, again, it's that same theory that you haven't played enough games, right? 23, of only 3 more than the minimum, just like the Tigers. I expect the Tigers' numbers to be all over the place because they've only played 21 games. And did we even see the Tigers up here? Let's see where they're sitting with their batting average. Hitting 256 with a 3.01 ERA, so better pitching than hitting for the Tigers. So here's ERA again. The Padres, look at this. Wasting a 2.90 ERA in the National League West with the Dodgers. You know, it's just a waste. That's great. That's Dave Roberts, Randy Jones, great pitching. What's that all about? Terrible. Only 80 RBI. Portland, 132 RBI. That's pretty good. 147 for the Cardinals. Where's that land on this list? They're pitching okay. Atlanta, 118. Any base stealing going on? Not really. And saves. Those are saves. So those are the stats for both leagues. Now we're going to go to individual stats and individual awards. First, let's go to look at the American League and give you some awards. Here is the hitting for, you have to have a minimum number, 75 plate appearances to this point. Tony Oliva hitting 406 at the break. But the MVP for the American League is going to be Reggie, leading the league in homer and RBI and even 10 stolen bases. The Rookie of the Year is kind of a surprise. And by Rookie of the Year, it has to be the 4th year, the 74. If that player has not been in the league yet, not just the 74 card, but the player not even be in the league. And it is Lenny Randle, who had previous major league experience, was pretty bad, wasn't in my league, then suddenly he posted a 302 card, so he got in my league and he got the American League Rookie of the Year. So Reggie Jackson, MVP, Lenny Randle, Rookie of the Year. Tony Oliva hitting 406 at the break. Again, Reggie's 9 homers and 29 RBIs and 10 stolen bases might pace everything. You got 10 homers for Jeff Burrows. Campaneris with 10 steals there. 21 stolen bases for Tommy Harper, and he's hitting 287. Boy, with Boston having such a bad year, that might be their all-star. And then it will go down in the American League, and we'll look just briefly at the bottom of the guys who have really stunk up the joint the most. And that would mean the guys who have here it is. So all of these guys here have stunk up the joint the most. And it's Horace Clarke wins the I've Stunk Up the Joint the Most award, hitting 150 and 107 plate appearances. Rico Petrocelli, remember talking about the Red Sox, 167. Oh my goodness. The White Sox, I want to keep Buddy Bradford on the bench at 184. Gene Tennis on Oakland, 187. Now, 2 more Red Sox second basemen, Doug Griffin and Mike Andrews, both stunk up the joint. Let's go to American League pitching. We got a Cy Young, and we have the Fireman of the Year. The Cy Young winner is actually going to be Jim Palmer. His 74 innings is just a little bit above Wilbur Wood here. The records are the same. The ERA is a half a run better than Wood. It was close. Cuellar, his teammate, pitched 13 fewer innings, and Skip Lockwood pitched a bunch of fewer innings with a 167 ERA. So Palmer gets the Cy Young. Okay, so Palmer gets the Cy Young, 206. Just 5-4 record though. It's a very interestingly odd year that's going to have a fun finish, I predict, though. A lot of times in the All-Star break, we get like an 8-1 pitcher. You know, we don't have that this year. You know, a 5-game winner is all we could get. It's very strange. There's some nice performances, though. We talked about the Expos. Bill Stoneman, their ace, with a 2.9 ERA and a 5-1 record. Dave McNally and Cuellar, Palmer's teammates, are right there up there with them. 5-0, 213, but just 42 innings. Cuellar 61. A nice little year for Doc Medich, 225, but just 40 innings. Here's Wilbur Wood, 73 and 2/3, 257. Holtzman's been the best of the Oakland pitchers at 287, because Blue and Hunter have been getting knocked around this year. Very strange. The Spaceman's pitched a lot for the Red Sox to a 3.13 ERA. Gaylord Perry as well for Cleveland, but just 5-3. Here's a 6-game winner, Mel Stottlemyre, but his ERA is 3.31 for the Yankees. And then when we get to the closer of the year, there's a bunch of guys who have 7 saves, like Joe Brezenda. And Doug Bird's got 9, Ken Sanders is 7. But one guy has 10, and that's Sparky Lyle. He's your Fireman of the Year in the American League with 10 saves. I also like to get a middle reliever some props if they pitch a ton of innings. These are all starters. This is their spot in the rotation. So I look at the next guy, and right now it's Ray Lamb. Normally a guy would have 20 innings. Ray Lamb is 18 and 2/3, 337. None of these ERAs are particularly exciting to put one of these dudes in the All-Star game because of it. Maybe Jerry Bell, 59 cents. I like to get a middle reliever in the All-Star game because of to honor that feat. Let's go to the National League now. We go to the National League. Manny Mota hitting 382 to pace the league. Your National League MVP is Hank Aaron with 15 homer and 27 RBI. The average dipped as they struggled in beating the Marlins 4-1, but they played 3 extra inning games. But what a great year for Hank with 15 homers. That's distancing the field. Though we do have some great performances. Again, Dusty Baker, his teammate. Look at those numbers. Jim Hickman, if you've been following the Cubs, really tore it up late in the year in their final series against the Reds, knocking the Reds into 3rd place. He's a Reds killer, so that's been one of the stories. And then you have, of course, Clemente doing Clemente things. Billy Williams also having a nice year for the Cubs. This is all late. Cubs had a terrible start, horrendous start, but they've picked it up, interestingly. Beckert, Billy Williams, and Jim Hickman all picked it up rather nicely. And you got Cedeno with 12 stolen bases here. Let's take a look at the National League Rookie of the Year. And we give it to Mike Schmidt. His 7 home runs and 6 stolen bases. I know his average is low, but let's face it, the Phillies were the worst team in the league, and right now they're in the playoff hunt. So I gave Mike Schmidt the Rookie of the Year, even though the batting average is there. But then look at what his batting average is compared to Tony Perez and Lee May, so it's not that bad. Stats are just down generally in the league this year. So we've looked at the MVP and some of the batting leaders, Rookie of the Year. Let's look at the worst of the worst in the National League. And Ron Say, John Milner. Look at Joe Morgan on the Astros at $1.65. Man, it seems like the Reds are struggling and Joe Morgan's struggling on the Astros. Sounds like a marriage made in heaven right there. Pop Stargell. He and Torrey and Hank Aaron all in that MVP race in 71, but not with that number. But he does have the 9 homers and 26 RBI. So that's a little bit of some of the... Most, you want to have all the hitters with at least 30 at-bats. Billy Cohen's going to need a couple. 35 for Jerry Terrell. You want to have all your pitchers in double digits innings pitched if you can. American League, you got, well, Baltimore's entire bullpen is just an inning beneath it. So all they need is give these guys an inning in one of their next games, Baltimore, to qualify for the minimum. National League, again, it's close to 10. So all these pitchers are going to have to pitch in the postseason tournament to get to the minimum requirement. Ideally, I like to say to get into a playoffs, you got to have 10 innings pitched and 30 plate appearances for all your players. And so that's about it for now with the first half break. We're going to have the All-Star game and a home run hitting contest from Home Run Derby from Detroit Stadium. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.